Hi,
All
Dan.
right. Hi, Tia. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to interview you. You know, I wanted to interview you for quite a while, so this is a great way to start the week.
I feel like we're offering people great northern energy because I'm coming to you from near the Canadian border here in Minnesota,
Yep.
and you're up there north of the border in Canada. So a lot of goodness to spread throughout the rest of the continent.
Yes, absolutely. So I first learned about you from Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. I took his year-long course, multiple courses on positive psychology and teaching the science of happiness. And he had this whole module on the blue zones. And I remember, it just blew my mind. I was like, what? This is the most amazing concept, amazing. All the ideas. I just fell in love with it instantly. And I shared with you, I talk about the blue zones to almost everyone that will listen. You founded the blue zones almost 2 decades ago, right? You're coming up on 20 years. And I would love to know how you first, where this idea, just how it first sparked this inside of you to really focus on the 5 places where people live the longest and the healthiest.
Tia, I had a company actually that we got paid to solve ancient mysteries. So for about 4 years, I had a team of a full-time staff of 14 people. And all we did, we took on 2 mysteries a year and we solved them in collaboration with a huge online audience. And I got very interested in mysteries that were relevant to people living. I mean, there's all kinds of arcane mysteries, like why did the Anasazi civilization collapse? Or, where did human origins get their start? But when you start talking about a mystery that could illuminate how the average American could live about 14 extra years and good years, we found that the popularity just soared. And then you start thinking about, well, how do you answer that question in a responsible way? And instead of looking for answers in a test tube or petri dish, I decided to go meta and work with demographers to find places around the world where people live statistically longest, and then reverse engineer from there. So in other words, if you have a population where people are reaching, their mid 90s without chronic disease or even age 100, and there are thousands of people in that population, sometimes millions, and you can find similar populations all over the globe and look for their common denominators, I reason you're probably getting close to a useful answer for everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So
I didn't know that's how you got to it. And
yes.
and was it a long journey to find those 5 places? Like how long did it take you, I guess?
It took about, to find all 5, it took about 7 years. Okay. So some of the blue zones were fairly well established, like Okinawa.
Yeah.
It wasn't called a blue zone, but people knew there was extraordinary female longevity there, probably since the 1990s, largely because of the Wilcox brothers. And then Gianni Pass discovered a longevity phenomena in Sardinia in about 2003 or 2004. But then I took it from there. I got an assignment from National Geographic and a number of National Geographic Explorer grants, and I would like to recognize them for their support in funding this research. But I found dug up some academic research showing that the Adventists in Loma Linda, California, are living about 10 years longer than other Americans, adherent Adventists. And then got 2 more grants from National Geographic. One was actually, I got several grants, but drilled dry wells. We thought the Vilcabamba Valley of Ecuador was a blue zone, and it wasn't. We thought that Cuba might be a blue zone, but we couldn't get the data. We debunked the Hunza Valley of Pakistan, Shangri-La, not a blue zone. But then we sort of hit gold in the Greek island of Ikaria, where we found a population, 10,000 people living about 8 years longer than Americans, largely without chronic disease, especially dementia. Almost no dementia on the island. And then the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, where we found the lowest rate of middle-age mortality in the world. So that's relatively poor people spending about a 15th the amount we do on healthcare, and making it to a healthy age 90 at about twice the rate as Americans do, with far less diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all the things that are bankrupting our healthcare system.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't think I've been to I've been to Sardinia. That's the only blue zone place I've been, but they're all on my bucket list. So there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge and information found in the blue zones, and looking at, even though they're spread across the world, there's similarities. And I really think that the Power 9 is super fascinating, because although there are different ways of living, different geographies, etc., there are similarities. And so I want to ask you, I have sort of two-part to this, is, in your opinion, how does the Power 9 connect to happiness? And also, how can busy people think about the Power 9 connecting to just success, and not just, so I guess it's happiness and success. And for me, success is all areas of life, right? It's your career, it's your marriage, it's parenting, it's everything. It's not just money in the bank or a title, right? So yeah, I would really like to know kind of the connection that you see between the Power 9 and happiness, and the Power 9 and success in life.
Well, we call it the Power 9. I actually regret the name, but it somehow stuck. But they were really the 9 common denominators that you see in all places where people are living a long time. So first of all, generally what they are, people don't exercise, but rather they live in environments that where every time they go to work or a friend's house, they're walking. Their houses are deconvenienced. They're moving naturally every 20 minutes, as opposed to thinking they're going to go to the gym with enough regularity. They have a strong sense of purpose. They have daily rituals that help unwind some of the stress and inflammation, like prayer and in some case meditation, ancestor veneration, nap taking. When it comes to what they eat, they're eating overwhelmingly a whole plant-based diet with very little meat and almost no processed foods. It's so clear that adds probably a half a dozen years of life expectancy. They drink a little, usually wine. They have strategies to keep from overeating. They tend to get all their calories in about a 10-hour window. They tend to eat a big breakfast and medium-sized lunch, and little or no dinner. They put their family first, which is really important on a number of different levels. They tend to belong to a faith, which is also favors longevity. And they're careful about their immediate social circle. And all of these are actionable. And these are the things, the common denominators that are giving people in blue zones about a decade extra life expectancy. And when you start to think about them, they are also the things that happiness researchers correlate with happiness. Having a sense of purpose, moving regularly, having a great immediate social network, belonging to a faith actually favors longevity in most countries. Putting your family first, putting an emphasis on strong familial ties. So it turns out the same things that help you make it to a healthy 95 or so. And notice I did not say healthy 100, because making it to 100, you probably have to have won the genetic lottery. but you can kind of promise people they can hit a healthy age 90. And the things I talk about are the practices and norms that we've evolved with over millennia that also happiness researchers will tell you lead to a high life satisfaction, which is of course how most happiness researchers measure happiness.
Right, right. And most of the listeners for this show are working full-time, busy, a lot of people leading teams. And I always say that work will, fill every crevice of your life. Email, of course, now there's Slack and all these other tools that, unless you're sleeping, work can really, I don't know if infiltrate's the right word, but is ever present, and I would say always on people's minds, especially type A driven people. So for people listening, thinking about, I would love to move more, or, of course I love my family. I would like to spend more time, but I'm so busy. Can you talk about, by prioritizing, and you can rebrand it, but I'll just call it, these important 9, how this actually could help people's professional career?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what your goal is. If you have some, financial goal that, maybe working all the time is your best strategy, or if you have a strong sense of purpose and your job is answering that call, that, maybe it's okay. Maybe but I would say for the average American, I can tell you from looking at Gallup data, 2 million employees rather, they will tell you only about 31% of them actually find purpose at work, which means that, well over 2/3 of Americans don't really like their job and they're not getting fulfillment there. So looking elsewhere for real life satisfaction is probably a good idea. I can tell you that people in the blue zones, the ones who are living the longest, they're not working more than a few hours a day, 6 or 7. And Denmark, I wrote a cover story for National Geographic on the happiest places in the world. And in Denmark, they're only working about 7 hours a day, taking 6 weeks of vacation. And, it's another data point to consider when you're planning out your life. I would say that if you're not sleeping enough, we know that people who are only sleeping 6 hours a day are about 30% less happy than people who are getting a full 8 hours. So you're probably cheating yourself if you're eating into your sleep time to work. And the happiest people report about 6 to 7 hours of face-to-face social interaction a day, not with working colleagues, but with people with whom they can have a meaningful conversation. So when people see the big picture and really clearly see it and see the data that underpins that big picture, they typically start to throttle back the number of hours they're working.
Yeah. I got certified as a chief happiness officer in Denmark, and I decided to go there specifically because of all the data and just understanding how they live and especially how they work. Because this is before the pandemic. The research showed that 13% of Americans were really happy while they were working. And at the time, 49% of Danish people said they were really happy while they're working. Not just happy, but they actually were, really enjoyed it. And so, I think there's a lot to learn there. So
I that book you see off to my side, The Blue Zones of Happiness. I unpacked that somewhat. Part of the reason is they live in a society that doesn't really celebrate status. So if you're walking around in Prada suits and driving around in a Lamborghini, you don't get any credit from your neighbors. They sort of wonder, what's wrong with him. The tall tree gets chopped down, and they do have very high tax rates. And even though they pay very high tax rates, 50% plus, All their health care is taken care of, child care, all their children's,
Education.
through university. They have the most generous benefits for retirement. So a lot of the things that Americans worry about are just off the table in Denmark. So the incentive to work like a madman to cover all these costs is, it's just not there. It doesn't make any sense to work super hard if your basics are covered, and you frowned upon if you try to buy a lot of status food material and show off, and you're going to get taxed to the mean almost. Not a lot of billionaires in Denmark, but also not a lot of street people either.
Right.
So that's
Right.
part of it sort of informs policy, what we might want to think about if we want a happy country, but the other part of it informs us, I think.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, for several Americans or even people in different countries, right? They need to work two jobs. Right? Because they're trying to make ends meet and everything. So of course, yeah, policy definitely plays a part. But for the people that are, their needs are met and they have extra, to really think about how you spend your time, what you choose to spend your money on, right? Is it those Prada shoes, or is it, experiences with your kids, that sort of thing. So yeah, making those conscious choices, which,
the effect of if you have an extra $1,000, if you buy a new gadget or a new pair of shoes, the luster of that thing wears off between 9 and 14 months. Whereas if you take that money and put it in financial security, for savings plan, paying down your mortgage, even buying insurance, the effect of financial security when it comes to happiness is about twice as powerful over time than spending that money on consumption. So, unless you have all the money you need already, you're far better off buying security than you are buying, show off or things that are going to, retail therapy. I actually don't buy that term.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's not therapy. It definitely needs a different term. Well, and of course, I can't help but think that social media and this comparison within culture, also can have people even more think, right? You're not just showing off those new shoes to maybe your social circle. You now have, all these strangers that are looking, which is I could talk a long time about social media, but yeah, that's a really, really good point. I always talk about experiences, but your point on security and having that safety, and of course not being in debt, and how that makes you feel and helps you for the better is a really, really good point. Okay, so I want to talk to you about your environment, because a really important point and message that you talk about in all your books and in videos and your newsletter is that the environment is so vital. Your environment, the environment you have in your home, how you set it up, maybe in your office. Can you talk about, and I know you have this great book along with many others, but here's one of the Blue Zones Challenge, a 4-week plan for a better, longer life. I'll hold it up close for everybody who's watching on YouTube. But again, busy professionals who are listening, talk about how we can all set up our environment, home and work, so that we're healthier and happier.
Yeah. So when it comes to trying to change your behavior, I'm not aware of any strategy, any diet, any positive psychology insight, or any exercise program or vitamin supplement regimen that works for the long term. If you look at the recidivism curves of all of them, they all tend to work for months, maybe a year, maybe single digit, 3-4% of people who start these things are still doing them in 10 years. So you start asking yourself, well, all right, I really want to be happier, or I really want to be healthier. if your financial planner gave you an investment that promised a 3% chance of a return over time, you'd probably fire him. But yet we keep signing up for these things over and over again because people make money at them. I mean, people who sell them to us make lots of money at it. It's like a Sisyphean treadmill.
And there's like a promise, right? You get this in 3 months. Yeah.
So for both the Blue Zone solution and Blue Zone of happiness, I went to the data sources. So for Blue Zones of Happiness, I found the data backed. I worked with Gallup and found all the correlations of things more likely to make us happy. And most of them are sort of long-term permanent things. So to start with, when you look at both happiness and longevity, about the most effective thing you can do if you're unhappy or unhealthy is move. And people say, what are you talking about? Well, if you follow unhappy immigrants that come from places like Southeast Asia and Africa, as they move, or even Soviet bloc countries, as they move to happy places like Denmark and Canada, actually, John Halliwell did this work, by the way, a Canadian not too far from you.
Yeah.
You find that within 1 year, sorry, I might have lost you for a minute. And within 1 year, people don't change much. Their marital status doesn't change, their gender doesn't change, their sexual orientation doesn't change, their education level, almost nothing changes except where they move. And within 1 year, many of those immigrants report a doubling of their happiness, and that is lasting. So there's no other strategy out there that will double your happiness. Zero, nothing in the positive psychology literature. But here, move. So then I started thinking, well, what are the elements of places like Denmark and Canada?
So you're not saying move exercise. You're saying move to a different place.
Yeah, I'm saying move your house. Yeah. And I know that sounds radical. I'm not going to move to Denmark, or I'm not going to move to Canada. But actually, if you look at things like the Gallup's well-being survey, the WBI, you can see very clearly what communities in America are happier. And there are places like Boulder, Colorado, Portland, Oregon, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ogden, Utah, Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I am right now. And these places aren't happy as a coincidence. They're happy because there's more equality. There's more access to green spaces. There's less traffic. There's better quality food. So when you ask people to remember to do something, to eat right, or to get their exercise, or to get in nature, if they got to get in their car and really search this stuff out, they're not going to do it. So I argue that if you want to get happier, there is plenty of data to show how to shape your home environment, your work environment, your social environment, and even your neighborhood. Now, some people have the inclination to get involved with local politics and change things, but for other people, it's moving. And by the way, where I live in Minneapolis right now, I live in an area called Kenwood. Mm-hmm. The life expectancy here is 13 years greater than it is just 3 miles down the road in Frogtown.
Wow.
So I guarantee you, living where I live, where it's green outside, I have sidewalks, I can walk to a healthy cafe in a few minutes. My neighbors, I'm not threatened by them. The easiest thing I could do for my health is stay right where I am, as opposed to, I could buy more house for the money in Frogtown, but, I'm probably going to get less happy, and my mindless decisions are going to be worse.
Okay, so that's really, really important and, powerful. Can you talk about some of the key choices or how people can set up their home or their work that is supported by the Blue Zones research?
Yeah, so setting up your home, you're better off with a front porch than a back deck. because you're more likely to get that 6 or 7 hours of social interaction if you're interacting with people walking by instead of cloistered in your backyard. If there's a toaster sitting on your counter, over the course of about a year and a half, you're likely to weigh about 6 pounds more than if you don't have a toaster. A toaster is one of these prompts to put something in it. Most of what we put in toasters isn't all that healthy, especially after we slather toppings on it, as opposed to a high quality fruit bowl, which prompts us to keep it full. A lot of us are going to bring junk food into our house, but the amount we consume is a function of where we put that junk food. If it's clipped in a bag on the counter, we consume it with much higher velocity than if we put it in an out of the way junk drawer, a place we have to stoop or reach. Good research on that. Not having a TV in the kitchen, another great strategy. People tend to eat to their favorite show and often eat mindlessly. That works. Having a small thing, but people who have plants actually get a little bit more physical activity, and they tend to report a slightly better experience with their home than people without plants. I think of it as a game of inches, not or another metaphor, not a silver bullet, but there's lots of evidence-based silver buckshot that you can unleash on your home to nudge you mindlessly into slightly better eating behaviors and social behaviors and movement behaviors.
Right.
It's simply investing in a really high quality bike and really high quality comfortable walking shoes that are always ready near your door, more likely to use them.
Super great tips. The toaster one, I've never heard that one before. So that's really interesting. Okay. So this will be my last question, even though I could probably talk to you all day long. So one of I find that a really challenging aspect of parenting, because I have 2 daughters that are almost 6 and 8. And I do feed them fruit and vegetables every day. I, try and feed them, healthy food. But grocery shopping, and I think I've heard you talk a little bit about this, grocery shopping in the United States and Canada, maybe not as much, but still, let's say North America. Of course, the majority of the grocery stores are, is filled with processed foods. And then of course on that, you get fruits and vegetables and, some healthy proteins all on the outside, but I feel like 95% of the store is processed, not healthy. So can you give tips or, ways of thinking about, and I would say, I'm going to add in also even peer pressure. So for example, my kids will come home and go, I don't know, Charlie has bear paws in her lunch. And I'm like, what? That's like cake. I'm not going to put like a bear paw cake in your lunch. No, but it's just, yeah. So can you talk about grocery shopping for a family and, just feeding kids when the environment, it's not like you're going to these beautiful little markets in Sardinia, you're going to these grocery stores. So can you talk about sort of parenting and I would say kind of this uphill battle that a lot of us are up against, at least I feel that way.
Yeah, there's a few tricks I write about. First of all, I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, the longest of people are eating whole food, plant-forward meals. Very little meat, no processed food. And it is 100% sure that the processed food and our over-reliance on animal products is shaving a half a dozen years off our life expectancy. The superfoods, as it were, in blue zones are beans. They're whole grains, nuts, greens, tubers. They're the cheapest, in many cases, most shelf-stable foods in the grocery store. But they're not heavily marketed to us, and they're not loaded up with these sort of false, misleading claims that get people buying things. So there's a few tricks. When it comes, kids tend to form lifelong eating habits by age 5. And you really want to, we come out of the womb with taste for exactly one food. Do you know what it is?
Milk.
That's exactly right. Mother's milk, not cow's milk, not another species milk, mother's milk.
Yeah.
And whether we form a liking for bulgur or beef or beets is what is introduced to us before we're age 5. There's very good research. So what you do is before dinner, while your kids are hungry and before you serve them whatever you take these little cups and you chop up a variety of vegetables, 20 vegetables, and you see what they eat. So instead of forcing the broccoli on them, when some kids just don't like broccoli, maybe it's the snap peas they like or the carrots. But you pay attention to what they naturally gravitate towards, and then you make a note of it, and that's what you cook them. So the deck is stacked in favor of they're going to like this vegetable if they self-select it. The other thing, and this is slightly self-serving, but my book, The Blue Zone's Kitchen, you don't have to get my book. There's lots of other good ones, but my book, The Blue Zone Kitchen, it's 100 plant-based recipes, so there'll be 100. If you sit with your kid and page through that, and there's beautiful photos, and have them pick out a half a dozen recipes and cook them together so that they have a participatory investment in it. And they've already, boy, that looks good, Mom. Rather than, putting all the onus on when I shop or when I cook my kids, let them pick it, but give them a choice between positives. I hear all the time, I can't afford to eat at Whole Foods. I can't afford to eat healthy. That is the absolute wrong thing. The healthiest foods on earth are the cheapest foods in the grocery store. It just takes some of Mom's time and ingenuity and setting up of the kitchen to make it taste good for their family. And once it tastes good, you don't have to talk kids into it anymore.
Right. Wow, that 20 vegetable. And now I probably, my kids probably eat 5, 6 different vegetables. They eat vegetables every day, but the variety isn't huge, and I will say they eat a lot of broccoli. They like broccoli, but I love that idea. And for sure, I actually use cooking time as like, okay, this is kind of some alone time for myself. And I'm not like, hey, come cook with me. I mean, sometimes, but not that often. So you've inspired me to do that a little bit.
You don't have to do it all the time. It's, people spend hundreds of dollars on meal plans and diets and experts. And the best investment you can make is take a Sunday afternoon, page through a book, a healthy recipe book, let your kids pick out a handful of recipes, go shop with them for those recipes and cook them together. You don't have to do it every day, but once you have the equipment to make the food, once you know how to make it, once you know that it tastes good, Mom can disengage from the convincing process because it'll sell itself.
Right. Because they're part of it. They're part of the choices. Yes. Okay. All right. Is there any, do you have a final comment or anything else that you would like to share before we finish today?
No, I would just reemphasize this idea. If you want to live longer or be happier, don't try to change your behavior, change your surroundings, because those are long lasting. Paying attention to your immediate social circle. We know that if your 3 best friends are obese and unhealthy, you have about 150% better chance of being overweight yourself. So taking the time to find a few friends like Tia, like you, who are happy and who are really seeking health and trying to eat healthy, that is all measurably contagious. And while I would not tell you to dump your old toxic friends, I will tell you that proactively finding friends whose idea of recreation is walking or pickleball or tennis, who are already eating mostly whole plant-based food, because when you're together, you're probably going to eat it with them, and who care about you on a bad day. That social circle is incredibly powerful. It's long-lasting and it's actionable. Nobody thinks about doing it because nobody makes any money off of you if you simply upgrade your social circle. but there's a mountain of data to show that it works, and it works for the long run.
I love that, Dan. I talk all the time about emotional contagion and energy, right, that we give off and that we spread. But I'm going to add in the piece about, that in a way, health spreads between people for how, the way that you just described it, of your social circle and who you spend time with, can transfer to you and leave a really positive impact, just like happiness. It sort of health works in the same way, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Okay.
So for those, I know you have sort of business executives as clients. One of the best pieces of advice for them is to help. According to Gallup, the biggest predictor of whether or not an employee likes his or her job is whether or not they have a best friend at work.
Yes.
So the extent to which managers can put their employees together, cluster them according to interests and values and schedule, so that they connect in a meaningful way in the workplace, and maybe around a healthy activity outside the workplace. Part of our Blue Zone project work is to cluster people and then challenge them to walk or do these Blue Zones potlucks together to build this social cohesiveness. If you want happy employees, that's probably the cheapest, most authentic, most lasting way to do it. And it doesn't. It's not some new technology gadget. It's not some expensive McKinsey intervention. It's harnessing how we evolved as human beings and putting that to work in our workplace.
Yeah, I have a section in my book called Foster Friendships, so I couldn't agree more. Oh, well, Dan, it's been such a pleasure. Know that for years you've been inspiring me from afar. I just love what you're doing and how you are making the world a better place. So everyone who's listening, grab one of Dan's books. And where's the best, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where's the best place for them to go?
Probably the best is my Instagram at Dan Buettner. I have a book coming out in December, and I have a website, danbuettner.com, with all my articles are there for free, and all my books are on Amazon, and 4 of them have been New York Times bestsellers, so they're easy to find.
Yes. Okay. I'll make sure we put that in the show notes too. Well, thank you for your time. I hope you have a fantastic summer in Minnesota, and hopefully I can have you back again in the future.
You're a total delight, Tia, and continue to thrive. And you have all of the knowledge and the wisdom and the energy. So you're a force for good. Go out and spread it.
Thank you.
All right, Tia. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.